Good afternoon. Dave Crocker with you on Warriors, Hard Chargers, and Patriots, connecting the little dots to the big dots. Today we're going to title our podcast, Connecting My Little Dot to the Biggest Dot. We're going to talk about influences that were derived via my combat chaplains and chaplains well after I left the Navy in terms of how I should live my life, and more importantly, at least at the time of military service, how I should lead and how I should connect with my sailors and their families. It comes back to this dialogue that we were having earlier, excuse me, about mavens and connectors, and in fact, finding these people who could offer you counsel and advice based on what they were collecting around the ship. These people that were interconnected between the various factions vertically and horizontally across the chains of command, multiple chains of command of the ship. And the advantage you had when these people sought you out because they thought you might benefit from their help and their counsel based on what they were thinking and what they were hearing. And of course, the information they were collecting based on how they saw me in this particular instance reacting to a variety of different things, and giving me just one more prism in that leadership schoolhouse in terms of how I should conduct myself and the advantages that I should infer to my people based on the position that I had in command of not only Carl Vinson but Incheon and XO and George Washington, and every command prior to and after Carl Vinson. But this particular set of leadership lessons, if you will, really weren't presented to me until I got to Carl Vinson and later after I got out of the Navy. And I just sort of like to throw out a couple of thoughts and ideas on maybe a leadership resource that maybe some of us have never thought of before. And that are the parables that are embedded in the chapters and verses of the Bible. And I would hear these various parables and either during the evening prayer or as a chaplain would stop by and either drop off an index card, or if he saw that I had a spare moment, which weren't many, but thankfully they were not afraid to stop by and just ask if they could talk about various things and various items that maybe had been recited during Mass on Sunday, or like I said again in the evening prayer. So I'm gonna throw out a couple, 5 or 6 of them at you. I just want you to think about it from this perspective. Maybe you've never thought about this before this way, and if you haven't, maybe it's something you want to think about. For me, it was just like I said. I viewed my life as a leader, needing all the help I could get. I was always learning. I was always experiencing things that I hadn't experienced before, and every idea that I could possibly grasp helped me hone my skills, but also enhance my view on the criticality of doing things right. So the first one I want to talk about was from the book of Matthew, and this was where Jesus was with Peter, and he had said, Jesus said to Peter, "Truly I say to you that this very night before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times." Now this happens shortly after the Last Supper, and they were, in my recollection, and Peter was indignant when Jesus had made this comment to him and basically told him that it wasn't going to happen. There's no way it could happen. And of course, for those of us who read the Bible and who have heard this parable in the context of a reading in church, know that it did in fact happen. And so my combat chaplain would stop by and he would say to me, "Well, what's this? How do you relate to this reading?" And so based on where I was at and what I was doing at the time, I just naturally intimated, that in fact this was all about, my role as a leader. And so I told the chaplain, I said, "Hey, listen, I think Peter has it pretty easy here. He had 3 opportunities to prove that in fact he was going to live up to his insistence that he would not deny Jesus 3 times, and yet he did." And so I said, I thought he had it easier than those of us that were in leadership positions because, in fact, we get one chance, only one. And if we don't live up to the promises we make or the commitments that we've made to other people, if our word is not, if we don't honor our word and our oath that to other folks to do the right things for them and to keep the ship safe, then we've lost their trust. And you only get one chance. And once you've lost their trust, whatever trust dividend you have worked so hard to build up, you now have lost. And it becomes a trust, instead of a trust dividend, it becomes a trust tax. And it takes forever to recover that. So, but it did remind me, and I to this day, it's in my brain that in fact there is a correlation there. And every time I hear this read in church, it comes back to my commitment and my need to be trustworthy as one of those three legs of the stool: trust, loyalty, and respect. And if I lost the trust, and loyalty and respect were also going to go with it. So that was, I think, an interesting read. The next one was from the book of Galatians, and it reads, "Carry each other's burden, and in this way you fulfill the law of Christ." Carry each other's burden. I was reminded by one of my chaplains that, we all suffer in one way or another. We suffer oftentimes in our own confines of our space, or maybe we got a bad letter, maybe we got other bad news from home. Maybe we're just lonely. Maybe after 3 or 4 months, we miss our families terribly. Maybe there's some other thing going on that causes us to have some challenges. And as my clinical psychiatrist was embarked on the ship reminded me, many come to the Navy and other lines of business as well with a bunch of baggage. We all have baggage to a certain degree, but that enhances that potential for suffering, if you will, and maybe even enhances it in terms of magnitude. So, we have to carry their burden in the sense that we have to try really hard to understand what's going on in their minds. And we can't necessarily eliminate it, but we can at least neutralize it to a certain degree by always paying attention to our young men and women and reading their body language and having those eyeball-to-eyeball discussions. And when you have a moment, stopping in a passageway and making sure the young man or woman are engaged with you in conversation, otherwise just passing each other at Mach 2 and getting the automatic, "Yeah, I'm doing great, Skipper," when maybe somebody's not doing so great. So I always thought it was part of my job to do whatever I could to eliminate or minimize or at least be aware of the burdens that my young men and women had to the maximum extent possible. You're never going to get it all right. But if I could convince the rest of my chain of command to also help carry that burden and help carry my burden, by the way. I mean, I always told them, I said, if you see I'm having a bad day, I don't mind if you come up and ask me how I'm doing because it'll help me to talk about those things as well. In fact, that's sort of the dialogue we had. And I think that's why we were relatively successful at making sure that we kept our people intact as a cohesive unit, because everyone worked pretty hard at doing this particular task. A third one is from the book of Exodus. "My presence will go with you, and I will give you rest." It's probably one of my favorite because it's all about this power of presence peace. The power to influence, the power to help, the power to soothe, the power to persist, recognizing that there's conflict everywhere, the power to present new possibilities, to drive to a deeper, more inspiring level of understanding of what we're doing, the power to discover previously hidden paths to the Holy Grail, whatever the Holy Grail is, and the power to elevate dreams and sustain faith and pursuit. So the power, so I read this, all right, so the presence to go with you and give you rest. I didn't take it literally. What I took this to mean is that that with my presence, I can at least give you some sort of satisfaction. And by giving you this authority and the clarity of coming up with your own ideas and ways to discover solutions, by recognizing that you're the experts and I'm going to rely on you to do the great things that you can do, and giving you the clarity and the leeway to go do those things, then I would hope that maybe, that we've basically done a little bit to give you a bit of rest and a little calm. Same would apply to the families at home, spouses, their children, extended families. If I could present my presence to them, let them know that I was with their sons, their daughters, their husbands, their wives, their uncles, their aunts, whatever they might be, that in fact that would give them a little bit of time to just pause, take a deep breath and go, okay, life is survivable. We're going to do fine. We're going to be okay. And it really is the power of presence that mattered, not only in the context, the biblical context, but in the context of how I viewed my role with these young men and women. One that we read often, you hear it a lot in the context of military lives, and certainly this was part of our evening prayer the night we entered the Persian Gulf for combat operations, was from the book of Psalm, and it reads, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and staff, they comfort me." So, I just remember sitting on the bridge listening to this as part of the prayer that night, and immediately it sort of took two different perspectives for me. One was my relationship with God, and I realized that my direct connection to Him was that that He had my back, and that when you think about a shepherd who's got both rod and staff, the rod is there to ward off all evil spirits and make sure that or any other predators or bad things that could happen to you. And the staff was there to basically help shepherd you, to guide you, to take you to those greener pastures, or in the case of the previous parable, to help you elevate you to find those new ways to find whatever the Holy Grail is for that particular moment. And so I had that connection, and I had that faith that he was going to do everything he could to protect our ship, our young men and women, and that just by my relationship with him, hopefully he understood that I needed all the help I could get, and that I just need to listen and believe and have faith that he was going to take care of us. The second perspective was my relationship again with my men and women and their families. I had to, I wanted to make sure that to the maximum extent possible that they didn't fear evil, and that we were together as a team. And that, in this particular case, my rod was the ability to, along with all the other wing commander, the admiral, and everyone else on the ship that had the ability to put a defensive or offensive force forward, that we were going to make sure that everyone was okay, and that they were going to be protected. And of course, we all used our staffs to guide our people, to make sure that we got our tribe together, that collectively we were doing all the right things to make the former happen, to make sure that in fact we were all okay. So collectively, that was, the staff was there to protect, and so that's what we did. And I just felt like, a lot of people stop right after "I will fear no evil, for you are with me." That's important. That's a faith thing for me, but I wanted my sailors to fear no evil as well, because I wanted them to know that all their leadership, from the division officers, the senior chief petty officers, the department heads, the admirals, the air wing commander, that we were there with them and we were there for them. and we were not going to let any evil happen to them. And to trust us that the advice and counsel we were giving them was going to help facilitate that. And again, this is one that is near and dear to a lot of people's hearts who go in harm's way, whether it's in the military, first responders, or what have you. The last place I want to go, and we could do this for hours. I won't, because there are some of you that might think that this is not pardon me, I almost fell off my chair. There's some of you that might think that this is not of interest to you, but this is really an important point. And it has to do with power versus humility. As my now pastor at my church here and on the civilian side of my life has reminded me, there's probably over 100 various verses in the Bible that relate to humility. There's not one that relates to power. And the context is that power is something that you naturally have by some of the, I was talking about power of presence. Well, the power of presence is sort of aligned to not only just, captains of ships or admirals in the Navy. It's everyone has a power of presence. A young man or woman who is an expert in a particular field has a power of presence just based on what they know and how they can go about doing their jobs. So that power is presumed by your expertise. It could be presumed by your seniority. It could be presumed by your ability from a warriorship perspective. But it is not something that you just go out and seek for power's sake. For those that do that, they'll use fear, they'll use divisiveness, they'll do whatever it takes to gain that power. And in fact, people who do it in this manner don't have power, really. Because fear only works as a motivator for a little while. When people are recognized as being toxic and aggressively seeking this ability to control things, people may still end up, quote unquote, working for you, but they'll work at a much decreased rate. The efficiency of maybe a leaking bucket versus the efficiency of a well-honed machine. So the sermon that came along with this, if you have a shopping cart, and on one side of the aisle you have rows upon rows of power, boxes of power, and on the other side you have rows and rows and boxes of humility, lots of humility. How do you fill your shopping cart? And the contention is that you just fill it with humility. Well, why is that? Well, the humility piece is what allows you to show your vulnerabilities and to open your aperture, if you will. And you're basically thinking of yourself as a big embracer here now, allowing people to get closer to you and have communications with you and talk with you and feel like that you're part of their team, and that all of these other things we've just mentioned can come to pass. And in fact, they do trust that you'll take care of them and that you'll guide them, but the communications that go along with this won't happen unless they can approach you. That's where the power comes. We all have power. So as a captain of a ship, I had certain responsibilities. Along with that came certain amounts of power. If I abused that power, then I lost my crew. So I had to make sure that, and I had made plenty of mistakes, and they would tell you that they heard me apologize on numerous occasions for those mistakes, because I wanted them to understand that I wasn't any better than they were, and to this day I'm not any better than they were, and they are. So those are some of the readings that we used, or that I use for my daily appreciation. And as I do my Bible study, I keep coming upon more and more of these. I always think of them in this context. And for me, it's a healthy context, because it's how I can personally be a better person and a better leader and a better parent and a better grandparent, which I'm working really hard on. Anyway, that's the story. I hope you found not necessarily the parables that I elected to use as useful, but just the concept of just yet another means from which you can make yourself a better person and a better leader. To me, it's been pretty eye-opening and pretty enlightening. that's it. Another 3,700 meters today. Feeling great in the pool. Feeling great about life. Feeling great about knowing all these young men and women who are still serving, and knowing you all as well. So I hope you have a great weekend, and I love you. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.